Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila Clubhouse version. I'm so excited. We are literally in the middle of a coffee shop, in the middle of Stapleton/Aurora at the Stanley. So shout out to Logan House for hosting us, even though you didn't know you were hosting us. But I'm here with one of my best longtime elementary school friends. Kindergarten. Oh, he was kindergarten. We talk about this every time, but I forget. Kindergarten. Jess Crow. She is a longtime professional and just started her own entrepreneurial jersey actually about 2 years ago.
Yeah, like ended 2019, started the company, but didn't really have an idea what I was going to do yet. And then dove in the first 2 months of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, wait, what?
I can't believe that's been 2 years.
I know.
So if you want to know the full beginning, go to Turmeric and Tequila. I think it was like cast 15.
Oh my goodness.
It was a long time ago. I meant to look that up. But anyways, there's a full cast on Justice Switch. We actually talk about alcohol and its effects and some angles around that. It's an awesome conversation. But anyways, we want to talk about the importance of coaching today and how as we get older, it just gets less and less normalized that we get a coach. As you're a kiddo, you go to soccer practice or you want to learn something, you go join a team and you find a coach. But it's super important to keep that throughout life so you can streamline process and really get to the top of your game faster the right way. So without further ado, Jessica, give us a little bit more about your background and how you kind of got to where you are today.
Yeah. So thanks, Kristen. Super excited to be on your show. I love it. I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me on for the second time. Hopefully many more to come. So my background, I grew up in Aurora, went to school in Boulder, finished school in Denver, and then had been working ever since I graduated. And when I ended high school, I sort of ended the coaching experience. Going through high school athletics, I decided not to play sports in college because I was super distracted by many other things. So I sort of lost that experience at that point. And when I started working, I was super motivated to just make money, to advance, to get ahead. And throughout my working experience, the companies that I worked for, several had leadership development opportunities and programs that were somewhat like coaching, but really the intent behind them was to expand your awareness of the organization and give you exposure to other leaders. But it gave me a little bit of a taste for what coaching could be like. And it wasn't until I was about to leave DaVita that I really got into investing in coaching individually. I was at a crossroads in my career. I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue working for the same place. And I was just sort of struggling with making decisions and what to do next. And by reaching out to a coach, I was able to align on what are my values and what are some of the reasons why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. And that really empowered me to take the next step. But I will say, I was in my late 30s at that point. And coaching is something where I think at the time I hadn't invested in it sooner because I thought it wasn't something that I could necessarily attain because of the cost or because of the commitment, which is just not an accurate way to go about thinking about it. That's something I've learned over time. So I worked with a coach prior to leaving DaVita. I worked with a coach after leaving DaVita. And DaVita is a great place to work too. It was just my time had sort of come to do something different and really take a look at why I was working and what I wanted to do next. And after I left the organization, a coach helped me, kind of rethink my lifestyle and my priorities and really get me back into a place of, holistic health, because having worked for almost 2 decades in a corporate environment, I'd let a lot of things sort of slip and slide along the way. And then throughout, since then, I've continued to invest in coaches who have helped me expand my awareness, who've helped me think differently, who've helped me move through different blocks. And I wish that I had made these choices earlier on in my career. Even, back when I was in college, you've got mentors, you've got advisors, you've got lots of people that are willing to help and support you along the way. But there's some sort of exchange between an individual and a coach that is different than a mentor, that is different than a boss, that is different than kind of anything else out there. And so that's sort of where I got into coaching. And now I'm doing that myself, where I'm teaching people different business skills and then applying coaching to that as well, because it's such a bigger impact and a more special experience. And I know, from our conversations, you and I have reached out to people that are intuitive coaches and healers and different, areas of our life. And so, and I think we've kind of crossed paths with some of the same people, but that's my experience with coaching and the value there. And I mean, I know you've being a college athlete and having lots of coaches, like what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, it's I like the couple points you pick up. We're going to unpack specifically what we do as professionals now, but I think it's really important we unpack the background, because how we got to where we are is critical. Because I don't think you need something until you really realize you don't have it. Yeah. And as simple as that sounds, it's usually a deep awareness of like a breakthrough of, okay, I got to fix something. And it's ironic because out of college, I started a business and I began the entrepreneurial journey right away because I had a college coach and I didn't want a boss anymore, like no matter what. So that shoved me in the entrepreneurial direction. However, and then from, after my business, I was still competing in CrossFit. So I had coaches athletically in my life, really to this day. But in my brain, it never flicked over that I should be doing that professionally. So when you had that in the corporate world of like guiding, and your companies are very intentional about progressing, and whether it's about the, the internals of the company or just being a better leader, that was something I had to kind of, a light bulb had to go off and I had to seek out on my own. And just like Jess said, we have traded like who to use for photography, who do you go to for core values, or how do you start to unpack some of these things. And it's usually never about the company you're with. I think you just hit a point in life where you're seeking something different or more, or you get probably so good at it, it gets complacent and then it becomes unfulfilling. So I was on the other side, more athletically experiencing that, while Jess was more, I think, professionally experiencing that. But the thing is, it's really not that different. Yeah. So, while I had all this coaching in my life, I really intersected with Jess talking about like core values and like, what are you doing to just figure out the whole human approach, personally, professionally, self-love, all the cliches. And that's why I think this conversation is so important, because just like what Jess said, it's you get so checked out post-graduation of college or high school or whatever that you quit seeking coaching and you think it's expensive. But really, taking that time coachless is more expensive than having to go back and then find a coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, kind of knowing that that's our base, we had like this awareness of, I need a good coach now. What really inspired you to start Apogy? Because it's outside of like your skill set and you're super qualified to do it. This really comes from your heart space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So when I left my corporate gig, I decided to start my own business, and it's called Apogy. We provide change management training and certification and coaching. And why I wanted to get into that space was because I had learned a lot along my professional journey. And there were so many times when I was working when I thought, God, it'd be so awesome if I had somebody who could just sit down with me and walk me through how to do this, that wanted to show me step by step. But my boss, you go into a corporate environment, they expect you to bring the expertise and hit the ground running. And the higher up you go, the harder it is to ask for help, because the expectation is that you're a professional. You own your development.
Is it like stigma you feel like is attached?
Yeah, for sure. And also it's just, when you're at a certain level too, I mean, from when you're an analyst to a VP, like you're expected to bring the value, and your manager is not necessarily going to train you. You have to find that on your own. And if you're not working with the coach, then you're doing a lot of, Googling or self-improvement or finding courses or whatever by yourself. So, and mentors are great because they can provide you with perspective, but they have the skin in the game is different. Yeah. And so I wanted to offer something to people that were working, that were trying to advance, that were wanting to do their job better, but provide it in a way where they're actually learning skills that they can use in the workplace. And then they've got me in their corner holding them accountable, which is what a coach does, identifying where they need to think differently or improve, which is what a coach does, right? They identify, here's where you could do something differently in order to get a different result. And I always think about that Olympian, Usain Bolt, how he had a coach, he's the fastest man in the world, but he relied on his coach to tell him, here's where you could improve, here's what you need to tweak, and he just dominated track and field for that reason. And so it's somebody who can say, do this differently, think about this in a different way, and hold that for you, and all they want is for your success. And that is what I had wanted and didn't get, and so I want to provide that to all of the people who are ready to, make a move, ready to grow in their career, ready to just, learn and grow and be better and have a resource to do that. So, and what about you? Why did you decide to kind of dovetail what you're doing into this space.
Well, that's really well said. I like that that's a phenomenal example with Usain Bolt, because I think we forget, everyone's the best in their game, but athletics are such a perfect example, because the best in the world have a team of humans coaching them, from nutrition to stretching to playing on the field. I mean, whatever it is, like, even their apparel is down to a science. Like, everything is in it. So I think the higher you up you get, it's actually, you should be having more of a coaching team.
Totally.
And it's that whole human approach of like personally, professionally, nutrition, lifting, fitness, whatever. Like, it's a whole package. I started to get into consulting because it just sort of happened. And, when I started my initial business, there wasn't Instagram yet. There wasn't anything. So I was just, I don't want to say trailblazing, but I was just figuring it out. And I was very comfortable in that space, because that's what I was doing with lacrosse, and that's what I've been doing forever. So it really wasn't that big of a deal to me. And again, it was better than having a boss. So I never felt uncomfortable in that space, but I had no idea what I was doing. I was just replicating what was working. So I figured if I could streamline anybody's process and I hate to say monetize some of my air, but really just share the gospel of my trial and error, because the world is moving so fast. Social media is moving fast. Every industry, like, the landscape is changing so quickly that if you don't tap into some of these resources of people that have done it before you, you will be run over, and it'll cost you time, energy, and money.
That is so you hit the nail on the head for me. And then that's actually, I sort of have utilized you as a coach to some degree, where you're further down the path than me, and you have shared your wisdom and your expertise, and you're so right where you can certainly struggle through it and figure it out. Like, that's a great path.
And
I
lot
think
of
both of you and I have done that.
Do that.
Yeah, because you have to. But then there's so much value in talking to someone who can cut out the 27 steps that was the trial and error that lasted you a year, and make those quantum leaps from where you're at to where you want to be. I mean, that is worth every freaking penny.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the money. If you think about, you waste 2 years figuring it out, and your message is your heart space. It's not just making a widget that's better than the widget prior. You're wasting 2 years of, you're getting pulled in a direction God, universe, Madonna is telling you is your gift. That's 2 years people don't have your voice in their life impacting what they're doing. Yeah. So it's money, and it's also just time and energy.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody's process looks different. And some people really need to go through like figuring it out to make it stick. So we feel you who, if you're like us. That being said, I have found myself investing, and again, it doesn't have to be like monetary. It could be an exchange of ideas with somebody. I do think when you put money behind it, there's more. It keeps using the word skin in the game, but you're
committed and you're accountable.
Yeah, that's right. That being said, there's a lot of different ways to get coaching, not necessarily from a coach. However, I've been seeking that out more as I've wanted to progress more quickly and accelerate the speed with which I am able to accomplish something. And that's more important to me now, especially as I want to get my message out there. I want to help people. I'm really excited about what I'm doing. And so, who can I tune into and tap into? And it's not always like who you think it's going to be will be, end up being your coach. It's sort of word of mouth, and then you're like, oh, that seems interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue of how to find a good coach, because there's a couple of things to go. Obviously, you need somebody that's applicable to your desired leveling up skill set, like whatever you're aiming to be. Also, it's personality. It's the way they deal and communicate with you. Are you genuinely inspired with them as a human? Like, that's big for me. Like, I can see some people that are really good at what they do, and then I see like their real life behavior, and I'm like, there's just something about it. Like, I just can't look at you as like a leader. Yeah. And people probably can say that about me easily. And they're like, you're drinking tequila, and I'm like, yeah, I'm really good at it. Yeah. But the good news is there's millions of people out there, so you find what works for you. Other people, that's a sell point. Yeah. So it depends on what it is. But what were the first steps? Like, and we've talked about this, like, just, I think we had this trial and process of like intuitives or core values. And I think some of those steps even led to like our, leveling up our professional pursuits. But what were some of the first steps you took to like, okay, now I know I need a coach. What was step one into like, where do I find one?
Yeah. So for me, the very first coach that I worked with, it was actually somebody that you had worked with and that Trevor had worked with, and where I was at. And I would, hopefully people have the awareness to move into this space before they're at sort of a quote unquote rock bottom. I felt really unfulfilled in my role, and I wasn't sure why and where to go next. And I was like, I need help. So
it was more personal than professional. Because I was exactly like this too.
And I wasn't necessarily, I think therapy is a very important modality and very valuable. And it's something that I have done in the past. Like, that is a beautiful avenue to go through. I was more interested in coaching at the time because I wanted somebody who could push me in a direction that had a specific like approach and an output that I wanted. It wasn't like, let's talk and we'll work through this. And that's very important to anybody's process anyways, right? But it was like, let's align on these things. Like, what are your values? That was the first one, because even though I'd gone through assessments and done work within the corporate space, I still didn't feel fully grounded in what I cared about most. And I was missing that. So it was a personal step. And thanks to word of mouth being you, and you'd gone through the process, because I think you were connected to this person. I don't even, like, through all your connections.
Another sports modality. The beautiful thing about my work is it's about human optimization, whether it's athletically or like military based or something. It's really about getting the most out of your life. Is kind of like the companies I work with. So it's ironic that I was doing this for work, but really so much of what I've been able to do, which has been such a blessing, has been nurturing to me.
Totally.
From brain stuff to coaching to physical health and wellness, nutrition. Anyways, yes, mine was like a connect from another health and wellness recovery center that I went to. It's like professional athletes.
Oh, right. That's right. I remember that. Okay. Yeah. So that was word of mouth. It was like, I'm stuck. Mm-hmm. I need a little bit of guidance here, and it's nice to have an unbiased third party provide that. Yeah. Because I could talk to my husband until I was blue in the face, and no matter what he says, I'd be like, whatever, like, not like that, but it's different when it's coming from somebody who they care about you, and so for me, it was like, whatever you say is because you care about me. I want like an unbiased,
Well, you knew I did it, so I'd already done the experience.
I saw the results that you had too. So that was sort of the first foray, and then from there, I thought it was a great experience. There were some things when you talk about like, what do you look for in a coach? This person had a really great process for identifying like values, but then the follow-up and the follow-through for me was a little bit lacking, and so that can happen. Do I still value the experience? 100%. It led me into a space where I was open to getting coaching from people in the future, and that has been transformative in my personal and professional life. So that was really where it started, was from a place of dissatisfaction. Where I'm at now is from a place of wanting to grow and get better, and do things more efficiently. So it's just been a progression, and a lot of it has come through just, you hear pings from people like, hey, I've talked to this person, hey, I've talked to this person, they've got this skill set, or they've got this capability, and you're like, oh, maybe that could help me. And even if it's one conversation or several, there's a light bulb that hopefully turns on when you have that conversation that allows you to think differently. And one more thing to add too, I really appreciate the live conversations with a human. Yeah. Do you agree that you can also get coaching, like be coached through people that you don't even know, that you're listening to a podcast? Like, I think that's one of the beauty of having those types of digital like content, is because it's like coaching, but it's not, one-to-one, which there's value in that too.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, the beauty of 2021 and, where our young people are at is it's normal to go to YouTube and figure out mental health, or even TikTok is like one of the leading modalities for mental health. And it's a whole other podcast. Yeah, we can unpack that later, but I'm here for it. The more I engage on TikTok, it's like soul Botox. You do see how like it speaks to certain generations, but there's meat in it. And just like when Jess said, our initial coach we had worked with, there were things you like and things you're like, oh, this could have been better. But then as you develop as a coach, you see things that don't vibe with you that inspire to dial those things in your process, if that makes sense. So some things that you seek out, like if it's your first coach and it's a little bit not what you expected, it's okay, because that's prefacing you for the next right coach or the next right step. And so you need some of those things where like, this isn't exactly perfect, but now I know what to look for next go.
Yeah, exactly.
And how to be better as a coach. Yeah. We're still out here for that. But the key piece, I think, is just being open-minded and pulling out what did work. Because I do think, like what Jess just said, is it's a process. The first coach isn't going to be right, just like your first job or first boyfriend or whatever. Like, it's okay, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is not a fit. Yeah. And then you work to find the next best correct fit. Yeah. So after that initial consultation, initial coach, what was your next step after that, being like, okay, and before I jump in, I want to, or jump to the next thing, really highlight, I think a lot of these pivots and looking for a coach happens when you are in life where you're like, I've done everything. I've got the job. I've got the family. I've got, or whatever your box looked like that you've checked, and you're like, there's still something missing, like unfulfilled.
Right.
And it's not necessarily unhappy, but it's like I'm a little piece of my light isn't shining 100%. I need to find it. And if you have got that feeling, I really encourage you to lean into it and know that's okay. If something's off, like you're getting that nudge for a reason, go find it. Everything, I don't want to say it can be 100%, but it can be close if you're really truly like in alignment. But what was the next step? So once you kind of gone through your initial coaching, and it was more like personal, when did you start to lean that into the professional?
So after I had worked with a coach after I left my corporate gig and was sort of realigning my life, getting more balance and, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional wellness back, because I really had sort of needed that. Then that experience with that coach transitioned into entrepreneurial business coaching.
So did you have intentions of being an entrepreneur at that point, or was that still kind of just
I knew when I left the company that I was at, I was no longer learning, and I felt like doing my own thing would give me an opportunity to learn more versus working for somebody else and playing the game. And I hate to say like play the game, but that's a big part of, a lot of.
That's a big part of business in general.
Just life,
it really
right?
is, yeah.
And I had seen my husband start his own law firm, and he was one of the people. He worked with a coach too, but everything was going really great. He was made partner at a firm, but he was still like had a little bit of like something was missing. That helped him make the leap and go and do his own thing. So I saw him do that, and I was like, well, damn, I can do that too. And I was super naive because I didn't know what I was going to do. But I was like, well, maybe I should do my own business. So once I finished working with that coach who was sort of helping me get balance back in my life, that was when I was ready to do my own thing or at least give it a shot. And because she had sort of done something similar, it just transitioned into, and she'd been working with a really big major yoga clothing brand that I liked a lot and was helping that CEO do business coaching. I was like, well, we've done this together. I really like you. This works for me. Now let's transition into this space. So we did business coaching for about 6 months, and then like once a month we met and would have a conversation. It wasn't every single week, which it was the first go around, but it was just nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. But then, with like the pandemic and stuff, I was like, I got to really reassess how I'm going to be spending my time. And I know what I need to do at this point. I just have to do it. So it was no longer like I needed the coaching. I just needed to invest my energy into what I was doing. So that's how it transitioned from personal to professional. And I will say, and I don't know if you agree with this, getting your mindset and like getting healthy and sort of exploring all those things that are, you kind of have to do that work first.
100%.
It'll follow you, like it'll happen no matter what, like throughout your process. But if you can enter into it with a really good, like balanced whole self, it's going to be challenging still, but maybe you'll be less surprised by what comes up as you're moving into that space. Because being an entrepreneur, being an owner, being a founder, it's very vulnerable, and there's all the ebbs and flows.
You have to
doubts.
be secure.
You have to, and even if you're not, like that's okay too. But it really does help to have somebody to guide you through that, to help you kind of work through those challenges. So does that answer the question, or was that?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. I think you highlight a really important point, and it's, I mean, to say this not so gracefully, but you have to unpack your shit, because no matter what, if it's business or professional relationships or whatever, you're still gonna have that piece of unfulfillment if you don't address what's within.
What's driving
you can do all the other things, but it's gonna be a missing piece. And I think that is kind of like the underlying base to any conversation. If you're seeking alignment or happiness, and nothing's ever perfect, but you have to deal with the stuff inside, and then the business will fall into place, then the relationship will fall into place, the kids or whatever your thing is. It is number one. So I think that's really important, and I'm glad you highlighted it, but that is a huge, huge piece of it. As far as like being an entrepreneur and being secure, I do think it's critical. And if you're insecure, I mean, you should have some base of imposter syndrome in your blood somewhere, because that will keep you accountable and keep you on the edge. Like people are always like, I want to get rid of that. And then I'm like, well, no, you should stay a little nervous at all times. Like, I think, like for sports, if I just know I'm going to be the best, like if anyone that's watched a team that's like should have, stomped some team that's coming up, it's like, David versus Goliath. You think they're going to win, and then they lose because they come in.
March Madness is so much fun to watch.
Yes, 100%. The Cinderella story, like you just believe, and you've got to be stay on your toes, because some younger, smarter, whatever team can come in and whoop on you. So I think a little bit of nervousness and sitting on the edge is okay. But you really do got to build that secure base, because so many days it's just you and you're going to be like, does this matter? Are people listening?
Totally.
And that's where I think a coach can really be like, yeah, you're good. Like, keep going, get on the bus, keep showing up. Like, it's going to happen. And I'm here and I'm cheering you on and I'm not lying to you. So
and your only motivation as a coach is to see that person you're coaching be successful, which is different than your boss wants you to be successful. Your coach wants you to be successful in athletics. But, you know, that being said, like, when you apply it outside of the athletic world, out into the business world, it's such a different exchange between a boss, a mentor, and a coach. Like, it's just their only job is to see you successful. So,
and I think it's kind of weird as you get older, because you're like, well, I think you do really know that that you don't really need a coach, because that's what we've been taught. I just watched, I think it was 2020, and they're talking about medical professionals, and they were saying how doctors, that are
Apogy, do you know who that is?
I think so.
Finish your story and then I'll tell you.
Well, and it's quick that basically there's such deep stigma with them around mental health and asking for help. So this is more about personal, but directly in their professional field, there's such deep stigma. And these are humans that have gone to school for 50,000 years and whatever. And there's more stigma, I think, there around asking for help than anywhere else. And that's why you see this like increased rate of suicide. When these are our smartest, quote unquote, humans, and they aren't allowed to go get help because there's such stigma around it, or they don't because of the stigma. It's pretty incredible. But what's your...
Mine was a different tangent, but what you just said is very important for people to be aware of, and aware that they need to ask for help when needed, and that's something that's challenging for many to do. Atul Gawande, he's a speaker, surgeon, TED Talk, and he was talking about how do you get, if you want to get better at anything, get a coach. And he is someone who has been highly trained.
Heard this. Yes.
He was in India and going to different birth centers and noticing the death rate for babies and mothers. And it was all very simple things that could be done differently, that were standard of care in the United States, for example. And these nurses and doctors where he was going to, they were highly trained, highly experienced. That being said, they needed to recognize, like, okay, if you do this and this and this different, then you're going to get a different outcome. And so by providing coaching, he sort of transcended that back into the, his workspace as a surgeon. Like, you're at the top, you've been extremely trained. Having somebody come in and provide that to you is how you're going to continue to improve. And I think where many people, once you've got the degree and then the other degree and then you've got the experience and you're at that, the high level, what do you do then? How do you keep getting better? At that point, I think many executives, for example, are like, well, I've got all of this experience, therefore I'm providing the coaching, but then they're not doing the development
I don't think
themselves.
They think they have to. Yeah. To be honest, as a competitor, I love to see that. Because I'm like, oh, good, you go ahead and take a break. I'm going to keep working, and in 2 weeks, you're going to be antiquated, and I just swoop in a neon outfit and streamline your entire process. So I think you look at it from two sides. One, you can get complacent and kind of do what you always did, and that worked for so many years. But I think in 2021, regardless of what field you're in, if you're not leveling up all the time, you absolutely will be run over by a YouTuber that's 12 in their basement doing this with 3 computers. Like, seriously, I mean, the process on things is moving so fast that if you think the old school way of just working with the same marketing company you always have, or just not questioning a better way on all levels, I think this is the year where it's like major shifts.
I think getting eclipsed is absolutely a possibility. I think the other side of it is you're going to see turnover and people quitting and companies getting a little bit more stagnant versus that growth trajectory that they need to stay in business, because you've got a younger workforce. There's 5 generations of workers in business today, and whether it's the YouTubers taking jobs from other people or in the corporate setting, you have to be able to connect with that workforce that is coming in behind us also, just in terms of like the years that they started working. And we also have to break down that stigma in the corporate setting. You would get a coach, an executive coach, when you needed some refinement, when you needed something that you had to work on. So I think breaking that down and giving, really investing in earlier in our young people, and not seeing it as something you do when you're a problem or you're having a problem, which is a wonderful reason to get coaching. But, I think it's just so critical to have it at all times and phases of your life in terms of moving forward.
Well, you look at our professional athletes, and the better they get, the more money it's invested in them, the more coaches they have in all angles of life.
Yep.
And I do want to highlight that there is something to be said about experience. So if you are that CEO, CMO,
Wisdom,
founder, whatever, if you can couple that experience with the young YouTuber mentality, or maybe partner with them or outsource pieces, or like just stay on the trend-setting tip, nobody can make up for that experience. But it's that open-mindedness of constantly wanting to learn and get better, coupled with the experience, coupled with it, and staying out of that really complacent, laid back, well, this works and it works forever mindset. Because it won't work forever. And you see this with major companies like Coca-Cola or Ben & Jerry's that has leaned heavily into like diversity and equality and really stepped out of the bounds. To highlight things that have really never been done before. And I think it's served them greatly. Also, tell us specifically about what you're doing, your programs, and give us like a highlight reel of everything you're offering right now.
Thank you. So change management, change leadership is what we provide in terms of training, coaching, and certification. And it's a really important skill set that not just people in a change manager role should possess. Anybody who is working in an organization or is...
Before that, you can break down change management.
Yeah.
Like, let's get down to like the way brass tacks.
Like, what in the heck is it? Okay. Yeah. So change management is working with people to help them understand what's happening and like what the current state is and getting to the future state. So anytime there's a transition in work, anytime there's a project, an initiative, or a culture shift, it's getting people on board with what's happening so they can feel good, make the right decisions, act independently, and support the business goals and objectives. So it's like a big high-level way of thinking about it, but it's how business moves forward. I'll give an example. If you have, let's say you're switching from one system to another, you could certainly be like, all right, we turn it on, we turn it off, and see what happens. But people are going to be upset. They're going to be pushed back. They may not adopt whatever the investment was, the solution, and it just results in you waste time, you waste money, people leave, and that's painful for companies. And then they're not able to move forward as fast or as effectively as they want to. Change management is a discipline that puts in a way of thinking, like an understanding that you, Kristen, your process of moving through a change, of experience change, is going to be different than my experience. Like, I like change a lot. I'm going to probably be one of those first movers on it. And like, okay, I can, get really excited. Some people are change averse. They might be like, ooh, I want to see what happens.
I would think most people don't like change.
Most people don't like change, yeah. And that's true. And so everyone has their own unique personal experience with it. And that's on top of the fact that like something still needs to be done differently within a company. So change management, I understand that about you and me, and then I'm going to apply process and tools to help you and me get through this together. So we're going to communicate and figure out like the messaging and how to explain the benefits and what are some of the potential barriers. I'm going to give you the training that you need to go from where you are today to be successful in the future. And we're going to continue to build relationship throughout the process. And so it's really like a combination of communications and training and relationship building, and it just takes different practices and puts them together in a package to make whatever is happening happen more smoothly and care about the people that are being affected versus making it this, here's a change and here's a change. Like, that's frustrating to people, and they don't know how to handle that. And then companies don't accomplish what they are wanting to accomplish.
Yeah.
Is that
100%? No, all I'm thinking is, I want to say like evolution management, like where you're just managing the evolution.
Yeah.
But all I'm thinking is like how this could be personally applied. Like divorce happens or the pandemic happens, and like something
how do you
changes,
transition?
And you have the life skill set to know how to transition eloquently or management.
How do you adapt? How do you learn? How do you grow? How do you keep moving forward versus getting stuck, digging in your heels, suffering? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is. It's a very business application and also human application on all fronts. Yeah. So what we do currently is We provide the more business context training so you can apply it to a project or program or initiative you're working on. But then the coaching piece comes in. It's like, I'm going to hold you accountable. I want to make sure you actually understand how to do this. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in your organization. Like, things are changing left and right. How can you still be successful when this decision just happened and that changes the trajectory of what you're working on? And really giving people that hand-holding to make sure that they're not just investing in training and learning, but they're actually able to apply it successfully. But I've had so many people that I've talked to be like, well, could you apply this just on like an individual level, just offer individual coaching for anybody who's in transition, who's, wanting to leave their career and do something different or whatever? And truthfully, I mean, the answer is, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe down the road, some individual coaching, but that's what Apogy does today. It's training any role in an organization who has any participation in a change project and an initiative, helping them be successful and helping them sort of raise the overall organizational resilience and success when it comes to, getting strategic execution and getting it done.
Yeah. But I think it's so critical for companies nowadays. Like, you see what Google and Microsoft and some of these super big forward-thinking situations, how much they put into their employees, with free food or nap time or, paid vacation or paid if you show up or not. Or, I mean, it's pretty evolutionary how taking care of your humans, which is your labor is always your biggest cost, no matter what industry you're in. So to take care of that is huge. That's kind of a new conversation in this day and age where it's like, oh, they are human beings. Maybe we should care about them. The more we care about them, the more they'll care about us. And that will show exponentially on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
So I think this is really a critical, affordable, and accessible way for however big or small your organization is to level up and to be hands-on about
and
it.
invest in your people.
Yeah.
And I'll say the things that companies have historically done, offering nap time or free food or fitness memberships, that works to a point. I think a certain demographic of employee, a certain generation, there was a lot more when the millennials and Gen Z, I believe, have a different attitude around what makes for a fulfilling
100%.
working experience. So those things are nice, but they want to know that you care for them as human beings. They want to work for companies with sustainable missions that are diverse and inclusive and care about the environment and care about people for people. And they're more willing to jump ship sooner because they're not going to tolerate the things that, our generation and above have tolerated because that was the expectation. You don't complain, you deal with it, And so I think it's really important because we have so many generations of employees too, to think differently about how change is constant and businesses, in order to innovate and continue to thrive, have to think differently about the incentives that they provide and the ways that they care for their employees in a different way than they have in the past. And the pandemic, I think, has really put an emphasis on that with the transition to remote working and people maybe not wanting to go back into the office and spend the same amount of hours that they were before. So change management is so important now because it really speaks to kind of pulling people together and helping humans and organizations move forward in the most productive, effective, and satisfying way. So
yeah. Well, I think that's well said, because right now, even with KO Alliance, I specifically lean into mission-driven companies.
Totally.
Because I want to, and being 40
You've
at this
always
point,
been that way too.
Yeah, I mean, it really has always been in my blood, and I usually, this has not always served me financially, but if I don't care, I don't care. And if I'm not personally drawn in, I'm just not, and there's no gray area around it. And again, that's cost me many big lucrative contracts. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad I stubbornly, consciously or unconsciously, stuck to it, because it's not the way, and it matters what you do. Like these footprints,
you're in
and the
integrity and alignment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And I think, just like you said, our younger generations, I think, are more aware of it. But even our older generations, just like what we went through, there was some point of dissatisfaction, whether it was a client that didn't care or a company or whatever. There was some point of us being dissatisfied, and regardless of the paycheck or convenience, or I can be complacent at work, we left, or we moved on, or we changed something. So I do believe, as a company, it's one of the most important things you can do to truly invest. Like, I'm here for naps and free food, but at 40, that's really less of a sell. than it is like, no, we actually care, we are mission driven, and we're here to help you be a better human alongside being a better professional.
I will say you have been somewhat ahead of your time in sort of how you have operated, in that that's been a consistent thread for you from the moment that you started working for yourself to the different athletes that you were working with to the different companies that you were working with. You've always had that line of integrity and like, this is what matters to me and this is who I want to work with. And I have seen you leave opportunities or say no, and that was, at the time it was like, well, I'm willing to tolerate that, like I'm surprised, but that is going to pay, and it has been paying dividends for you now because you have never wavered from that. And that is something that I think many people and organizations are catching up to because it is so necessary today. So kudos to you. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. That speaks to my heart on so many levels. Because sometimes, and I say this to every entrepreneur, sticking to your guns, even again, it wasn't like I had something to prove or like this is it. I just literally couldn't do it. So I'm so glad now that is the right thing. But I think as an entrepreneur, you really have to have your own checks and balances. Because DC and I did find myself in situations where I'm like, I know we're 2 years in and the paycheck's great, and like I thought it was a good thing. But it's really not. And Jessica had actually asked me this like 2 conversations ago. She's like, why do you feel this like disruptive point? Why do you want to shake up the earth? And I really had to like sit down and think. And I'm like, is this from my family? And I'm like, is it what? And I'm like, no, like my parents are amazing. But to be honest, I was doing my own thing at 15, 16. Like I started my own colleges. It was more of, Fred's coming in. Yay.
Sorry to interrupt that. We got
Fred, come on in.
There we go. Cool.
I think you're in. I think we're good. It was more of a point of getting to like the top of these games, even athletically, professionally, like dealing with big clients or being, a top 20 D1 team. And it's not that I was the best player, but getting to the top of some of these things and being like, oh, maybe some of these humans really aren't that great, or this process isn't that clean or clear, or something just doesn't feel right. I think that has fueled my fire more than anything of like, this is why we need to shake stuff up. So to circle it all back, I think you do have to make these integrity pieces.
Highlight though too, when you were in those moments where you had that awareness, like this isn't working, then I would have conversations with you and you'd like talk to a coach or somebody in that coaching role, like get to that breakthrough moment. And you've done your own coaching, like self-coaching too. But I just remember there was moments where you're like, here's where I'm at. And then you'd have this breakthrough conversation with somebody. And I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah. And that's really critical. Sometimes it is formal coaching, but to have homies and friends to be like, I hear you and I get this. And also like sometimes when you're so in the thick of it, like I remember my brother at one point being like, you're not you. Something's up. Like something's off. Like you need to figure something out. Like having someone around you that's, maybe it is a paid professional coach, maybe it's just a friend, but to someone that knows you, be like, you got to stop. Because you do get dialed into it, whether it's corporate world or me for CrossFit. I was so far down the hole in it that I was like, I had to be pulled out, and there was deep evolution there. But you had to have people close to you that know you, because no matter how balanced you are and how good you are at being aware, you will get sucked into some situations. It's just is what it is. Yeah. Yep. That balance is hard. Well, that's actually kind of a good segue too. With the business and the personal, I want you to talk a little bit about the yoga. How have you maintained like your personal evolution? Because entrepreneurial, family, like so many things can take over. It is hard to do the quote unquote self-care.
Yeah. Well, yoga too. So I'm a yoga instructor part-time. And I got into teacher training during a lower point where I was like, I need to focus on something productive that makes me happy. This was when I was working really hard at in the corporate world. And, for me, that was self-care in itself, was going through that process. Yoga has always been like exercise, fitness. You're going to be getting benefit from that. But what I really like about that practice in particular is the whole mind, body, spirit connection. And I'm very aligned with, yoga philosophy. So went through that process to heal, and now it's leveraged to sustain and maintain, balance and quality, and kind of something I come back to whenever I feel like I need, to develop strength, flexibility, but also get into the mind and body together, because our body reflects sort of what we're feeling subconsciously and consciously. And yoga as a practice, so for anybody who's interested in getting into yoga or interested in exploring it, and again, you can get these benefits from going for a run and doing CrossFit, but with practice and the intention behind yoga is that you're sort of moving the energy, clearing the blocks, clearing the tension, releasing whatever is within, and that aligns with releasing some of the, what's going on in your head as well.
I love that you do that as a coach, because I think that I need to do more yoga. CrossFit is my church, but my body is so, we're so tight at this point. And you could see my face is a little burned from a chem peel, so we are a hot mess right now, but I'm here for transparency. You can know the truth. But it's amazing that, you can, I love coaches that live it and preach it. And that sounds funny, but a lot of coaches don't. Like, they'll just talk about it.
But that has been like the flaw that I have found in the coaches where I'm like, that was okay, was where it's like you have this piece that you're really good at articulating, but when it comes to like living it, I'm not seeing it, or you don't have that experience. And for me, that matters. Now,
me too.
There are some coaches who are like really well versed in having conversations and, doing like coaching conversations and whatever. And that's great. And that there's tremendous value in that. But I think we're aligned where it's like, I want to see that show up.
I think that's the future consumer, though. I put money on it. Like, I think that anyone that's not living what they're preaching, you either A, need to be in politics, or B, you need to go do something else, because I don't think that works anymore. I really don't. And this is my unsolicited consultation to anyone that's listening. I don't think you can do that anymore. And the thing is, not only are you not doing what you preach, you're not evolving your own process. Like, you're not living it and being like, oh, I didn't understand this changed. Or, it's so hard for me to even listen back to my podcast, because I hear my voice, or I say so much, or I talk so fast. And it's like, I gotta re-listen to them and keep being a student of the game, otherwise my process isn't evolving. So I think you got to be in it, and you got to do it to continue to level up. So I think at some point the whole yoga, the whole lifestyle will feed your sell point as a coach, 100%.
And with Apogy, we do integrate well-being into the training already. So within the course, for example, there's a meditation, there's movement breaks, there's recommendations to journal and write things down, and that's just infused because your whole person, the way that you learn, the way that you grow, having a whole, like, being well is going to support your learning, going to support your growth, and make you more open and ready for change. I love that you're going back and like listening and learning that way. But I also know that you, Kristen, are taking care of yourself when it comes to what you're eating and your exercise and all of those other things. And if you have those things aren't like aligned, then it's going to be really hard to grow in other areas, because then you're kind of out of balance,
Totally. This is why you spring for that top shelf tequila, because it is good self-care. Yes. It's worth it. You got to balance. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here in about 5 minutes. I just hope there's some really transparent through lines as far as taking care of yourself, and feeding the self will feed the business, the personal, the relationship, everything else around it. The importance of seeking out a good coach, personally and professionally, talking to the community around you, your friends, what they think. I think the word of mouth is a great, simple way to find a good coach to lean in, and really clear and transparent on why that coaching as we get older streamlines process, holds you accountable, and is so deeply important. Do you want to give us a quick 411 on the courses that you have available right now? It's been out for about 6 months, or is it longer?
It has been, but we redid our training. So now we've got change leadership, coaching, coaching, and certification program. So that includes 7 weeks of coaching calls with me. And then we also just have the course. So it's the training, the change management, change leadership certification training that people who prefer independent learning, that maybe are current change managers, that want to just dabble in, like, let me get a different way of thinking about change management. Great opportunity there, and you can get certified as an Apogy certified change leader. The coaching part I really love, because then I can develop a relationship with the person, and we can work on an actual project together, and we can see those breakthroughs, but both are really great. So it's those two for now, more to come hopefully in the future. We've got, if you go to our website, www.apogy.biz. You can sign up to get on our email list. You can follow us on LinkedIn. We'll have a webinar coming up on May 18th. So if you're interested in learning more about what this whole change management training, coaching, certification experience could be like, I'm going to be doing a live tour of...
Is that free?
It's free, yeah. So you can register through the site. You can go on LinkedIn and follow Apogy and register that way. And then I'll just walk you through, like, here's what you're going to get out of this. Here's what the course is going to look like. Here's what your experience will be like. And then if you work with me, here's what that'll be like. So more to come on the 18th of May. It's at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. And yeah, so that's it. But hopefully more. And then, again, the individual coaching hopefully will come down the pike. Got to think about how to structure that offering and make it meaningful for those who are interested in that piece, I love adding the business skill to it, because then it's sort of like the 1-2 punch. You're going to be, learning something new. The conversations are also really valuable. So we'll see where that goes.
And when are you teaching yoga?
I teach at the Core Power in Central Park now, aka Stapleton was the name, now it's Central Park. Every Wednesday at 10:45 and noon, and then I sub a lot too. So those are my two regular classes.
Get your biz right, get your mind right. I love it.
All right.
It's all the angles, and I know Justin and I are both open. If you've got a question on coaches we suggest, or a recommendation, or whatever, you know how to get a hold of us. KO Alliance, my consulting firm, is out here. We are working specifically with mission-driven businesses and a lot of 501c3s, nonprofits, and people that are really just working to shake up the space. So if you're that, holler at me. We are content creators, professional. We can kind of help you in all the angles. If you know with us. But Jessica, I really appreciate your time and energy.
Thank you. Same. It's always fun talking with you.
Yeah, let's do this in like 6 months. We'll do another Clubhouse. Parker and Fred look alive, and we'll check in and see how the course has gone and where biz is at. Kind of coming out of the pandemic and everything launching, and people, I think, being more open-minded to dialing in their business now that they're out and free, and we can create the hustle.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.